Hello everyone, and welcome to my second video over the young Napoleon portrait. In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my process for sessions 4, 5, and 6. As you remember, we left off with a little bit of a frogman painting, and my main goal for this next session was to just kind of go back over and start to refine the shapes on the face. I made them a bit cartoony and a bit like a caricature. So my main goal was to add in more flesh tones and start to build up the glazing layers so that the portrait would look more like my son and less like an old French man. And so what I find really key is the eyes, and this is an area that I'm still really working with, is shaping and refining the eyes. And if you see any of my videos, you'll notice that's one area that I spend a lot of time with because I tend to make them either too small or too large. So one of my areas of challenge with this particular painting was really kind of focusing on the eyes and giving the eyes a bit more symmetry and a bit more realism. There, a lot of the books that I've read have said try to make the eyes like sisters rather than twins, and so that is something that I have taken to heart. In order to create the eyes, I started first with a base of a really light blue. My son's eyes are blue, but they have these really beautiful kind of dark blue rings. So I started with that light blue, added in the ring, and then painted the iris. Whenever you see me putting the shop towel against the painting, what I'm trying to do is blot up the extra paint and absorb a little bit of the excess oil so that I can go back in and do another layer. I have found that using the shop towel in this way, which is actually recommended by Kevin Hill, is a great way to soak up a little bit of that extra oil, to take off paint if need be, and it allows you to go back in without mixing mud, which is really important. One of the elements of process that I've been working with is going slowly. I think I mentioned this in my last video, but going slowly and really taking the time to add a layer at a time and to allow myself space between sessions, because when I allow myself space between sessions, I'm able to see the issues and the problems better than if I were to kind of try to go straight through like with an alla prima. So in addition to focusing on glazing, I'm also teaching myself to take that little bit of perspective. Another great tip that I had received was to put the canvas upside down in the studio in between painting sessions so that when you come back and you look at it again, you're seeing the image for the first time, or you're looking at it again that way for the first time. So it's easier to see some of these things because you get used to seeing the image in a certain way, and it makes it harder to adjust. This is the point where I became happier. I felt like the painting was starting to look more like a little boy and more like my son than it had previously. And so I knew I was on the right track. And once I get through that initial ugly stage to where the painting starts to actually take on the likeness of the individual that I am painting, this is when things get really exciting for me. So you can see I'm coming back. This is my, I believe, 5th session, and I'm just going ahead and enhancing those shadows. I continue to darken the shadows throughout each stage because I find that I need to continue to adjust the light. And this is another area of challenge that I'm continuing to practice and continuing to work on. My son has these beautiful cheeks, so it was a lot of fun to paint them and paint the shading and the highlight, and I continue to adjust these to the very last stage. And you can see here I am going in and just thinking more about the eyes, adjusting the colors around the eyes. I wanted to make the upper lid a bit darker and darker around the corners of the eyes to give them a bit more depth on the face. And as always, I continue to just refine the colors of the eye and the shape of the eye. Often one eye might be a little bit bigger than the other, so I'm always trying to go back in and adjust the lids and such, the lips as well. It's very interesting when you're coloring the lips, because the lips actually have so many different shades in them, and so you want them to be flesh tone, but you also want to bring out those rosy tones as well. So I'm just kind of going back and forth, making the inside of the lip where the lips meet a little bit darker than the outside of the lip, and continuing to adjust those shadows around the face until I am more happy with how everything is looking. One of the really exciting elements of using glazing is that when you're glazing, you continue to see the layers underneath. And so it builds up this kind of luminescence in the skin. And I was very pleased with how that was taking shape at this level. There you can see I'm blotting off a bit more of that oil so I can go in and do some blending. Also, when you're glazing in layers, sometimes you can put the darker shades on and then wipe them off, and it stains the canvas a bit, or it stains that previous layer. I'm going back in and I'm doing a second layer of glazing for the uniform. And as I mentioned previously, this uniform is inspired by Napoleon's uniform, but it's not an exact copy. I picked out elements that I thought were fun and would be interesting to paint. And it's really with this Prussian blue and this red that the vividness of the uniform starts to come through. I was very, very pleased with the saturation of the colors at this stage. I go in and I am glazing over that initial color. I'm adding in a little bit of vine black, just a very thin transparent layer of vine black for the shadows, and then hitting with a little bit of lead white just to highlight the top of those fabric folds. And I really liked this approach. I was really pleased with how the overall look of the fabric came out, and the colors are very, very bright and beautiful. I think it's a little bit hard to capture with the camera, especially with the window and the lights and everything that I use to paint, but it is a very beautiful, beautiful shade of blue, and I was very pleased with that. I'm also going in and whitening up the frontispiece a bit and adding in the buttons. For the buttons, I actually used just a yellow ochre, and I tinted it with a little bit of black to give it more of a brassy color. You have to be careful with the black though, because if you put too much in, it tends towards green. But I just was going back over with the yellow ochre and just kind of darkening up some of those earlier glazing layers that I had put in, and starting to just really kind of build up the color. I decided also to make gloves at the bottom instead of painting the hands. I would really like to do another project where I focus specifically on the hands to learn more about painting hands, but for this one, I feel like the gloves fit well. The cat, as you know, has been a challenge for me since the start of this painting, so going back in and just adding a lot of different colors to the cat. The cat that we have is a tabby cat, and he has oranges and yellows and stripes and grays and blacks and whites. And so I wanted to not make an exact copy, but get the feel for this big fluffy tomcat that we have, and add in those stripes and add in those patches of hair so that it could be better inspired by the cat that we have. I also wanted to be sure to look at the overall position of the cat. The cat actually liked to be held like a baby would be held. So it's a bit of a strange kind of position, but I wanted to make sure that it matched my reference photo. I'm just kind of going in and adding a bit more detail on the button at the top of the hat, and then adding some blue and a little bit of yellow ochre to the gloves to get them a bit more dimension. Cat's not perfect, but I think it works well for this particular piece. It's not the focal point of the painting, but it is an important element of the painting. So I just kind of keep that in mind as I was moving forward with the painting overall. Adding in the whiskers is still an area of challenge, but I find that I just did a quick swipe to give the appearance of whiskers, and this was a lot of fun, and it was really neat to kind of see that come together, and also adding in a bit of my son's blonde hair. I had given him bangs, but I thought he was starting to look a bit like Lord Farquaad from Shrek, so I took those back out, and it's another great reason to use these glazing layers is it's very easy to reverse the last layer, which would be difficult with something that was done alla prima or all at once. So this is where I am ending the 5th session. As I move into the 6th session, I'm just really looking at enhancing those details. I add in a little bit of detail to the braided work on the trim for the uniform, and these are just kind of dashes and the appearance of thread work, just to give the painting a little bit more dimension, a little bit more depth. I'm adding those same kind of details onto the hat. Little dashes are kind of cross hatching there, and then also adding in a bit more dimension to the ribbons for the top of the hat, and then the metal on the chest, as well as the buttons, just to give a little bit more depth. The main area of concern for this painting was, of course, the face. So that is where I spent the most time, but I wanted to enhance those other details to kind of try to bring everything up to around the same level. I also added another highlight of white in various elements, just to kind of think about where these ribbons and the cat and the buttons would catch the light, and just to give it a bit more depth. Depth and dimension are things that I've been really concerned about in this last layer. And the cuffs, of course, and then I will go in and I will give another layer of shadowing and shading to the face as well, just to kind of dial down some of the fullness of the cheeks and to offer that last layer of highlight. I find that I like to put those highlights in at each stage just so I can kind of keep progress for myself, but I always want to go in and put the whitest whites or the brightest brights at the very end. Although for the face, they were actually mixed with red, so it's not a pure white, it's more of like a pink white, just to kind of keep in line with the other colors. As I mentioned, I've really tried to challenge myself with painting different face shapes and different approaches to painting the face. I use the Verdicchio for this, and although you don't see any of the greenish underlayer, I do feel that it really helped to set me up for success with the shadows and with the form of the face, and it is something I'd like to try again in the future because I feel that overall it was successful. With every painting, there is always areas of challenges and areas of successes, and I feel that this painting had some really great successes, and it's also given me some new areas to try to work towards and challenge myself with in the future. So it was a great learning experience. It was a great learning process. And with every painting, I learned more about myself as a painter. I become more patient. I become more willing to work through challenges and problems. And finishing a painting, even with any areas that I might not be as happy with, is still an accomplishment because we've made something on the canvas that wasn't there before, and I think that's pretty cool. So just adding in these last little details here, and if you guys are interested in a more full tutorial or a real-time tutorial, please let me know, and we can work together on something like that. It would be a lot of fun to do a portrait with everyone following along. I think that would be great. This portrait, of course, once it has dried, will be varnished, and I will be adding it to my portrait wall with the ones that I've done this year. And I have here all of the different stages and sessions so that you can see how much it changes from session to session. And this is why it's important to be patient and to follow the process and to allow your eye time to rest. So thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share to help my channel grow. And I look forward to seeing you all again for the next painting. Please also check out the full time-lapse video for this painting. There's no narration, just music, if you're interested in watching from start to finish. Thank you so much, everyone.